Hello, everybody. I am sitting on our new couch here in the DML estate. I know that you guys had a lot to say about the other couch that we had scrounged up from around here. It was everything from ratty to looked like something from St. Patrick's Day. It was like an old green sofa, and we've upgraded to this really nice, comfortable plush couch. And it elevates me a little bit too. That other one was very low to the ground. So now, when Dennis and I will be talking as he sits in his desk, or if he's sitting across in this new leather chair that we've gotten, it's a more natural way to have a conversation. And speaking of which, Dennis will actually be joining us during this walk and talk here before long. But we're going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to hit some of the top news, and then we're going to have a little discussion on immigration, the border wall, and some of the latest breaking news with that as well. So let's get right into it. We've got a good sized audience, and I want to tell you guys about this new exciting project that's happening in Michigan. This morning, President Donald Trump tweeted that Ford was going to have a big announcement today. He said, quote, "Big announcement by Ford today, major investment to be made in 3 Michigan plants, car companies coming back to the United States, jobs, jobs, jobs." That's pretty much going to be the hallmark of this administration. I mean, based on his progress thus far, he's got major Fortune 500 companies investing literally tens of billions of dollars in the American economy and in their American workforces. Everything from the Japanese company SoftBank to communications giant Charter to the Play-Doh maker Hasbro to Ford to GM to Fiat to ExxonMobil to Boeing and Lockheed Martin. They're bringing back tons and tons of jobs here to the United States and investing literally tens of billions of dollars. And this is just scratching the surface. Samsung, LG, bringing jobs that were otherwise in Mexico here to the United States. It's an amazing moment, and it shows just what a little bit of effort from a president of the United States can do. It shows the power of the president of the United States. If he just picks up his phone, if Barack Obama had done what Trump did, starting the day after his election in November, which is picking up the phone and talking to the CEOs of these major companies and saying, hey, the United States is ready to do business. We're going to cut taxes to make it more competitive to do work. We're going to cut regulations so you can get down to business. He would sit down with the CEOs of Exxon and major oil drillers and say, we're going to help you through oil exploration in the Gulf of Mexico to create tens of thousands of jobs for Americans. They're good, high-paying jobs. Not these jobs that, I'm not degrading somebody that works, waiting tables and all of that. They're good jobs, but they don't pay enough to sustain a big family, unfortunately. They just don't. The jobs that a company like ExxonMobil are creating, or in the case of this Ford power plant, where they're investing $1.2 billion in Michigan, one of the most economically depressed states, unfortunately, in this country. I mean, if you go back and you look in recent history, Detroit was like New York or Paris. It was a center of arts and culture, and the economy there was just a well-oiled machine. And then globalization struck. And Trump, his election signaled the very end of that. The potential for a renaissance in the American Midwest. And it wasn't just talk. We're doing it. Just in the last 3 months, Ford has invested over $1.9 billion in the state of Michigan. In just the last 3 months. That's the product of working with a president that's cutting regulations and cutting burdens for businesses. And he signaled that if you're going to make these products overseas and you're going to exploit cheap labor that the American workforce can't compete with, we're going to put a tax on the import of your goods. And we're going to use that money to go and retrain workers so that they're more competitive here in the United States. And lo and behold, what has happened is all of these companies have started investing in the American economy. And so getting down into the details of this specific deal, Ford said that it will invest $850 million to retool its Michigan assembly plant in Wayne to produce trucks and SUVs. They will invest another $150 million in an engine plant and another $200 million in a data center for the company's Flat Rock assembly plant, and another $700 million and 700 brand new jobs to support the production of electrified and autonomous vehicles, all in Michigan. So now I didn't mean to throw you there. I thought you were already mic'd up. Sorry about that, Dennis. But we've just been joined by the big boss here, and I know we've got lots to cover. So I'll give you.
Are you referring to my stomach?
No, it's not a commentary on your physique.
Referring to my stomach?
No, not at all.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. All right.
So what are you just talking about? The jobs in Michigan?
Yeah, well, I was saying that in just the last 3 months, Ford has invested over $1.9 billion in Michigan. And today they announced another $1.2 billion in 3 Michigan plants, building SUVs, engines, and electric vehicles.
Have you ever been to Detroit?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It doesn't look like America.
It doesn't. I remember I was leaving a meeting in Detroit, and I was going back to the airport, and I had stopped over in Dearborn, and I was having lunch there, and it was crazy. I was going in to get a table, and the lights were out, and I was like, "What is going on?" You know, I talked to the hostess. I said, "I can't. The lights are off here." She said, "This is something that happens all the time here in our brand new shopping center." It was a beautiful shopping center that had just been built, and I thought, you know, you would think that you were in any place in America, and so that's the infrastructure there in Michigan, is that it's just fallen apart. It's like, it really is. Parts of it are like a third world country, and it's sad.
It could use the influx of jobs.
No question.
But it needs more than just jobs.
What does it need?
Well, I mean, yeah, sometimes the city of Detroit has had to turn off the lights to save money, as you said, like the stoplights and stuff of that nature.
It's crazy.
But when you actually look at the buildings,
yeah,
and you go through, I mean, it looks like the old pictures of Beirut. You know, when you go down,
just
I mean,
bombed out.
all bombed out. There's a big, I can't remember. I think it's the train station.
Yeah.
You know, where it's just like this huge
big hotel
building,
above it. Yes,
the hotel above
exactly.
it, and it's just all windows blown out all over the place. I mean, it doesn't look like America at all.
It looks like a war was fought there.
Yes, it does. It does.
Really,
it looks like,
honestly.
yeah. I mean, that's the best way you could describe it. Is that, and I don't think it's almost like the Grand Canyon. You know, people say you can't film or photograph the Grand Canyon. Excuse me, because it's so big.
Yeah.
So you can never really get a good sense for what it really looks like. The same thing applies when it comes to Michigan and Detroit on how bad it is. I mean, it's like you can't capture it all. We tried capturing it all when we drove around, and it was impossible. I mean, you don't know what to capture and what not to capture. Not to mention the fact that sometimes you're afraid of just getting out of your car.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've also been to South Chicago too. South Chicago's dangerous and it's bad, but it doesn't, and it looks run down, but it doesn't look like it looks like in Detroit.
Yeah.
So hopefully with the influx of new jobs that come back in there.
Yeah,
I mean, I even interviewed a couple of people in Michigan as well. There was one black guy. He was sitting on his porch, and we were driving down the street. And as we were driving down the street, I had this woman, Patty, was driving me. We were in a white pearly minivan.
Yeah.
I mean, we stuck out in a big way. So, but she's from the area, so she was driving me around, and we were in the front. I had a camera, and this is on YouTube. You can see this. And I go up to a guy who's sitting on his porch. It's summertime, so he's, you know, pretty much all he's got is a little pair of shorts on. And I pull, and his neighborhood is a disaster.
Yeah.
I mean, to the point of where before we pulled over to him, we pulled over to a woman who had a little girl, and we asked, how hard is it to raise a child in this area? And she said, it's almost impossible, because you can go into any one of these homes and you'll find dead people. All right, so that's the sort of thing. And I said, dead people in terms of like, they just died because of old age? She goes, no, dead people because they've been killed. Oh. So yeah, because the drugs and everything else is so around. So anyway, long story short, I go and we pull up to this guy, and I come out and I'm like, you know, here I am, Mr. Pearly White, coming out of the Pearly White minivan. And I say to him, do you mind if I come up and ask you a couple questions on camera? He's like, no, come on up. So I asked him, I said, first question I asked him was, what do you think of President Barack Hussein Obama? That was the first, although I left out the Hussein part. So what do you think of President Obama? And he said, I think he's good. This is back when Obama was in office. I think he's good. I said, yeah, did you vote for him? He said, yeah, I voted for him. I said, all right. So I said, what happened to your neighborhood here, man? And he's like, he goes, this is the ghetto. It never used to look like this. He says, people can't find jobs. He said, they can't find good jobs. The only jobs you can find is working at Popeyes, like the fried food place. And we don't even have those really here in New York. But
Well, they're good.
Popeyes,
If you go, they're really good.
Yeah, I mean, I look like I've been eating Popeyes, but we don't have them here. But you can only get a job at McDonald's or a place at Popeyes. There's no real good jobs anymore. They've all moved out. And then he expressed to me about how it was that the neighborhood there used to have a community center and that there used to be block parties. He says, now it's the ghetto. All these people left. And this was about 2 years ago. And I said to him, so if you look back, when did the transformation start? And he goes, about 5 years ago. I said, you do realize that's right after Barack Obama took office, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, you kind of catch them a little bit. And then here you go. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I always had promised about a new administration coming in was that they would turn around and look at places like Detroit and say, if we fix this, this is how it is that you fix America. Because of a couple of reasons. Number one is, first of all, even though you may not live in Detroit, we all own it. You know what I mean? We all, this is America. So it's like saying, hey, listen, I don't sleep in my kid's bedroom, so I'm going to let it just, disintegrate. That's not the case. So the other thing is that I truly believe, especially, and I'm going a little bit here into a different topic, but when you look at some of the minority communities and how bad they've been hit, when you go into these places, it must be so brutally hard for these people to get up every day and feel any sense of positive at all. Because when you go out and you see graffiti and broken this and broken that and everything's run down, it just gets your attitude into a lull.
Forget even going out of your house. I mean, we read all the time about somebody sitting in their living room in Chicago, in south side of Chicago, and a bullet comes through their window. Your family, think about how traumatizing an experience that is for young children to grow up in those circumstances where they're not even safe in their own home. Well, it's horrible. It's horrible.
The way that you change it, as far as I mean, there's a lot of different things that you have to do, in my opinion, in order to change it. But the biggest impact that people can make, it starts with jobs, bringing jobs in there, which is not easy. Because if you take somebody like me, an entrepreneur, right? And you're an entrepreneur, you've had your own businesses. I would never open a business in one of those places, right? So it's going to take a Ford to say, hey, we're going to bring manufacturing back. And then once they prove the way and start people coming, that's when small businesses start to open up after that. So hopefully this does the trick.
Absolutely.
Yep. But then also you got to get rid of the drugs and you got to get rid of the gang members and stuff like that. So there's more to it.
Well, and the next thing that we saw was CNN is reporting that President Donald Trump, his administration, has requested a supplemental budget allocation of about $1 billion to fund 62 miles of border wall. This will include replacing some existing fencing along the southern border and 48 miles of new border wall. They will include concrete barricades. The money will fund 14 miles of new border wall in San Diego, 28 miles of levee wall barriers, and 6 miles of new border wall in the Rio Grande Valley region, and 14 miles of replacement fencing in San Diego. And like I said, it will include concrete elements. He's requested about $1 billion for this year. He's requesting another $2.6 billion for border infrastructure and technology in 2018. Estimates for the full wall across the southern border to stretch all of the thousands of miles across the southern border is between $12 billion and $20 billion. President Trump claims that he can get it done for less. Trump's executive order on immigration enforcement is already having some reasonable effect. Trump said that that arrests are up 50%, charges are up 40%, and requests to detain arrested individuals who are deported are up 80%. That's all according to the Department of Homeland Security.
So what is, there's a couple of different topics here.
Yeah.
What is your take on the border wall itself? Because build it, no matter what the price is.
Well, okay. Well, I look at it I look at this as a potential to create jobs both in the short term and long term to maintain this thing. It's going to cost what it costs. Okay. And I believe that we should have not just a physical barrier, but also an electronic barrier. And I don't think that we should limit it to just our southern border, but also our northern border as well. And then you have to remember that we have these wide swaths of ocean on both of our coasts. and so and the Gulf Coast. And so it's not just fixing the southern border doesn't fix it all. And I know you and I have talked about E-Verify. So I look at solving the issue, the crisis of immigration, as a multifaceted approach. I mean, the border wall is not the one size fits all. But yes, I think we should build it.
Okay. So I have, it's sort of like, to me, the border wall has always been sort of, you're going to go to a great restaurant and they ask you, do you want the dessert? And you say, well, I really don't need it. And they said, well, it's with, it comes. And I said, all right, give it to me.
Yeah.
To me, the border wall is a nice to have. It's not a must have. I know a lot of people disagree with that. When I look at the border wall and I look at some of the numbers that we're seeing already, it makes the argument of, sure, we need barriers, but I've always been pitching we need to remove the incentive to come.
Of course.
Right? So now I want to read out some numbers here. The border apprehensions in February were actually underneath 20,000. So when you look year over year, it is a 40% decrease to where we were last year with Barack Obama. However, if you look at the 3 months prior to Trump taking office, apprehensions at the border were over 120% compared to the same time last year. So it depends on how it is that you want to do this math, right? If you want to just dissect January and February and say, hey, the numbers are down by 40%, that's fantastic. I'll be the first one to cheer for that. If you want to take the fact and you want to blend it over what would be known as the winter, unfortunately, a lot of the people that may have said, hey, we're going to plan, remember, you just don't pick up one day if you're in Guatemala and say, oh, all right, yesterday we were at work, today we're going to America. You plan for this. First of all, you need to save your money because you're going to have to pay a cartel to get you, a smuggler to get you through. You're going to have to plan because it's a very long journey from Central America coming up in through Mexico. And by the way, most of the people coming in nowadays aren't even Mexicans anymore. So it's really other than Mexicans, which includes these people from Central America. So anyway, it's a long journey to come up. So it's a lot of planning. When it was very clear that Trump was going to win on election night, and then after that, people said, hey, let's take the trip that we were planning for. We can't wait anymore. We've got to go now. So a lot of the numbers that would have been January and February pushed earlier. Okay, so I think that there's a little bit of that narrative that you have to push back and saying, okay, you know what? It wasn't. It's like me saying to you, I owe you $100, and instead of me giving you 5 months of 20s, I give you 50. 30, and then it goes down lower, right? So it's sort of that sort of way. The real way to test this is to see what it's going to be like in March, April, and May. Right? Because what's happened, the other thing you got to remember about January and February is historically those numbers are always low, and the reason why they're low is because it's so cold to travel at night, and these people are on foot, so it makes it a little more difficult. So same thing goes in the summer. July always sees a massive dip because it just becomes so hot you'll die in the desert. So how does it look in March, April, and May? If those numbers continue to stay down, that you can just alone say that's the Trump effect. Right?
We just need more data, is what you're saying, to really understand what's happening.
Well, to really understand if the Trump effect, right? The thought or the threat or the promise of that you're not going to be able to come here to America illegally anymore. If that's the case, which I think it is by and large, because that's why you had that big, huge rush in the beginning, and then you have this decline coming now. If it continues to decline, it makes the argument. It makes the argument that just sending the message alone, there's no more party here, alone will stop people from coming. And so that's why I come back and say, if you take the next step and remove the incentive to stay here or come here, people won't come. And so now your border wall that you're going to be spending all this money on, which, oh, by the way, they could still build tunnels and they could still come around the water and all this other different stuff. Your border wall, instead of maybe spending the unbelievable amount of money that we're talking about spending, we can hire, you want to talk about jobs, we can hire more Border Patrol agents and put more people at the front line at the border to stop these crossings, drugs and illegals coming through. Now, the other problem I have with the wall that I've always had, and now reports are coming up that's sort of catching up with my concerns, was that not everybody along the border wants a border wall. There are many liberals along the border. There are many people who profit, unfortunately, from that cheap labor and from the things that go back and forth through that border. So then there are people who just have properties who don't want to look outside and see a big concrete 30-foot wall. So they're going to use, along with all the lefty groups, the legal system and all the environmental cases they possibly can to slow this thing down. And I'm sure that's going to have an impact. So while that's all slowing down, although I want to go back to say, just like when I'm at the restaurant, all right, I'll take the dessert.
Yeah.
I'll take the wall.
Yeah.
But to really be most effective, I would rather see us take our linebackers and our safeties and push them up to the line, because right now they're not up there, and they're not up there in the numbers. So I would prefer to see more money put towards that.
That's a different conversation, though. I mean, he promised this, and he's got to deliver, at least in part. Well, he has to. This is his most visible promise from the election.
Okay, so let's you and I debate that a little bit. Was the promise more of a physical wall?
Yes.
Or was the promise more of, I'm going to stop the flood of illegals coming into this country?
I think he made both promises, but he very clearly, explicitly promised in vivid detail the wall. You know, I mean, I don't think it was a metaphor. Now, if they start saying that it was a metaphor, that's because he can't get it done. But, and that will be an excuse that they'll use to explain it away. But he very clearly made the promise that he was going to build a wall, and he's building parts of a wall, at least the parts that he can do without any sort of legislation. He can just tie this in as a budget supplement, and it will probably get funded.
Well, first of all, there was already the and I'm not a lawyer, so I have to I'd have to look into this more. But there was already approval for the existing of building the wall.
But it's the funding.
It's just not completed.
It's the funding.
It's the funding.
Yes.
So I have been to this border so many different times, and I have been. There is a ranch. You can see it in my films. John Ladd's Ranch. It is in Naco, Arizona. It is an 18-foot wall. We've got all the lights you can possibly imagine. We've got radar on the ground. We've got radar in the sky. We've got drones. We've got everything you can possibly want to have on 13 miles of border, including the Mr. Terry, I can't remember his first name, a Border Patrol station, which is one of the most sophisticated, newest Border Patrol stations there are at the end of that 13-mile stretch. So imagine that, 13 miles of border with a big, huge Border Patrol station with about 400 vehicles that probably cost $100,000 to $120,000 each. They're all equipped. You've got all these lights. I mean, the sort of lights that look like a football stadium.
Like a floodlight,
I mean, you got everything you want, including an 18-foot barrier fence where the steel is at least this thick, okay? Back when I was there a year and a half ago, I used to go every single year. John Ladd showed me pictures of where the cartel, which was right across the way, would literally take a saw and cut through this amazingly robust fence. Just cut it, knock it down, drive their trucks through, and they did it 42 times in 24 months, and they never, ever got caught.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's why I come back.
How is that possible, though?
Thank you very little. So that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because there has never been a will to stop these people. And that's why I come back to say, you can build a wall, you can put a moat with alligators in it, as Obama said, until you remove the incentive for people to come here, and until you crack down on those cartels directly, people are going to find a way.
Yeah.
We've spent gazillions of dollars on that 13-mile stretch, and it still is like a sieve. I always go back, and I've always told this story. How many people, the people who were with me for a while, they always know I tell this story. Back in 2013, there were 5,000, give or take either way, bank robberies. And most of them, I can't remember the exact percentage. I must be getting old and forgetting things. It was like 98%, give or take, were successful bank robberies. Despite the vaults, despite the cameras, despite the security guards, despite all the different things, they were successful. Why? Because there was an incentive to get that money. How many banks do you think were broken into that had been closed down and didn't have any money in the vault? Zero.
Yeah.
That argument right there is it. These numbers, which are positive and great, and as far as I am concerned, right now you could stamp it just simply by saying the Trump effect, right? The Trump effect. That right there has said the incentive to come here is gone. This man's going to not let the party continue. And there is no barrier wall here, and the numbers are already going down. We haven't done anything different other than say there's no more catch and release program. That didn't cost $1. That cost 10 cents in a cell phone call.
Yeah, nothing. Well, you talk about removing the incentive. If we're going to do that, it requires a level of enforcement, things like E-Verify, but also compliance by local law enforcement. We talked about this before with federal officials, with immigration officers. And meanwhile, you have many major metropolitan areas, major counties, major cities in this country saying that they will continue not to comply with the Justice Department.
Right.
And here's a New York City Council speaker, Melissa Mark Vivitro. She said, "We are going to become the Trump administration's worst nightmare." She says before a bunch of officials that are at her level at a small conference that included leading council members and mayors from San Francisco, Seattle, Denver, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, and LA. And after that, it has inspired every single mayor of major liberal metropolitan areas in this country to say that they will continue to be sanctuary cities. We've seen it from LA. We saw it from the Godfather in Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, and we've heard it from Bill de Blasio here in New York. And so if we're going to remove the incentive, and if we're going to start cracking down on immigration, on illegal immigration, then how can we possibly do it when we're not in agreement, even in this country, when even law enforcement's not in agreement on how to enforce the laws? Because there's a very stark contrast between major metropolitan areas in this country and federal officials. So how do we tackle that? I mean, it doesn't seem like we can get any of this done as long as we're going to be this divided.
This is the most simplest. You know, when you look at immigration to some degree, maybe you can say healthcare is a very close second, if not tied, is a very complex issue. However, to solve it is the easiest thing in the world. It's the same thing as I just talked about, not having people cross the border anymore. Everybody's tough. You know, even something I dealt with this morning. You know, somebody's out there, they write something out on Facebook. You know, they're tough when they're behind the keyboard.
Yeah, but you see them.
Once you turn around, you take it and you hand it over to a lawyer, and the lawyer turns around and makes a little phone call, they run like little rats.
Yep.
Okay. When you take something like a de Blasio or Emanuel or anybody like that, touting their horn, doing all that, that's rhetoric, and that's just cheering to their people who are going to continue to vote for them in their liberal cities. Watch how tough they become if the administration or whoever it is, Congress, you name whoever it is, takes away the funding. Stop talking about taking away the funding. Take it away. Once you start putting the strangulation on the neck, believe me, they're going to let go.
Do you know how much Chicago gets paid out every year by the federal government for things like roads and different transportation projects? Do you know? It's over $1 billion.
Pull it.
You know?
Pull it.
Yeah.
You pull it, and see, that's the other thing too. Everybody who defends the illegal immigration or letting these people stay, they've all got these big passionate arguments until you stick it in their own backyard. I love the videos where you have people going up to people. They're all over the place. I mean, there's always one of those man on the street things that could always get a lot of wow. You know, go up and say to somebody, hey, what do you think about illegal immigration? Do you think these people should be able to stay? Oh yeah, I believe they'll be able to stay. Great. Well, listen, what we're going to do is a new program where one illegal immigrant gets to stay with somebody who says, yeah, let's keep them. So you're going to be taking one of these people now, okay? Oh, I can't take them. I can't take them. So all of a sudden, if you pull that money from Chicago, you pull that money from New York, and roads don't get fixed, and the money isn't there for this, and the money isn't there for that, and the answer comes back to, well, because you want to keep the illegal aliens there. You know what the people are going to be like? Send them home.
Well, could this backfire
on who?
On Trump.
In what sense?
Well, the funding that a city like Chicago gets from the federal government includes funding for transportation, housing, public health, and law enforcement, and some education. So, you know, if there's not enough funding for, you know, some programs in schools or for hospitals or for, you know, police and ambulances because they depend on these federal grants, could that backfire on Trump?
Sure, it could. I don't know whether or not what anybody's plan is, but again, I mean, if just using common sense in some cases, you don't. If they're getting $1 billion, don't take all $1 billion. Start off with taking $100 million.
Take the transportation funding out. Yeah.
Start off with $100 million.
Yeah.
Then start off with $200 million.
Right.
Slowly but surely make them feel the pain. You know what I mean? Take the Band-Aid off nice and slow.
Nice and slow.
You know? And then what happens is, so this way it never gets to that point, and then you come out with, that's a good time of taking out the Twitter. By the way, we've removed $100 million from Chicago. Sorry about this, but you know, we can't have sanctuary cities.
Yeah.
And then just let that. And then what happens is that you change the narrative and you change the pressure pot. And the pressure goes on Manuel to change his ways. And that's what you do. That's where I think that's the play that has to be taken. You know, the other thing too, just I would be remiss not to put this out in our prior conversation when we're talking about the wall. When you said, when I asked you what was the promise made, the wall or essentially ending illegal immigration, you said both. Okay, well here's the issue. The wall only solves half, and it doesn't solve the problem. It's a component in solving the overall
I totally
problem.
agree. Yes.
But keep in mind and remember this, and people forget this. They forget it. And I was reading one of the comments on that was going by. It said, "What about the terrorists coming in?" A wall is not going to stop the terrorists coming in. The terrorists are coming in so far, although they do come in through the border. I would be the first one. I've been on many different programs saying that. 50% or more of the people who are here illegally have come in legally.
Yes.
Okay, they've come in legally.
Yeah.
So a border wall is not going to stop that. I remember one time, this is about, oh boy, it was about 1.5 years ago. This was after, just like 2 months after Trump had announced that he was going to run. And he was pounding on the wall. And you know, we're going to build a wall, Mexico's going to pay for it, to build a wall, Mexico's going to pay for it. Fox and Friends called me, asked me to come on. And I hadn't been on television for like 3 or 4 months. I vowed I'm not doing this anymore. You know, I was out of it. But I couldn't, because I was so passionate about it, I couldn't hold myself back. I went on. And what it was there was a bunch of guys, I think it was in South Florida, who all came in on a boat. They jumped off the boat, they got into the sand, and they do what illegal immigrants are taught to do in some of these cases. They jump off, they know they're going to be approached, and they scatter. So this way, and I've worked down there with the Border Patrol, I've watched what these guys do, meaning the illegals. They come in together as a group, and then they scatter. Because they know that there's only maybe 2 Border Patrol or 2 cops or whatever, and there's 16 of them. So you know what? 2 guys are going to get caught and 14 are going free. You know what I mean? So to that extent, I remember being on there and saying, listen, a border wall doesn't stop that.
No.
But the incentive to come here illegally, remove that, and that does.
Yeah.
And so there's my argument. Locked in.
Yeah.
Down.
I'm with you.
Yep.
So anyway, we'll see what happens with this. I mean, Sessions was in the White House yesterday, in the White House press room, and he said that I urge the nation's states, cities, and counties to carefully consider the harm they are doing to our citizens by refusing to enforce our immigration laws. Sessions said that local jurisdictions seeking U.S. Department of Justice grants must first demonstrate that they are not sanctuary cities by proving that they are in compliance with the law, which requires notification of federal officials about the immigration status of people in local custody. This is like just basic. You know, I feel like a lot of people everybody that watches this, I feel like they're probably much more well-informed on immigration law than most people.
Hold on. What's it? It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I drink Diet Snapple.
Yeah, it's free advertising.
Yeah, there you go. Diet Snapple. You got a commercial.
Yeah. So anyway, so this seems very basic. I'm sure that most people don't really understand what a sanctuary city is, and because the expectation or the request of federal immigration officers is very, very simple, right? I mean, they're just saying if you detain someone whose immigration status isn't demonstrated, then or isn't clear, then you have to hand them over to us. Or if they're on a list and you have to hand them over to us. This is basic. It's basic. So I'm trying to understand, being a registered Democrat, I'm trying to empathize with where they're coming from. And I can't quite do it, much in the same way that I feel like Trump's promise to build the wall is just a political fixture it's a political promise that he made that he has to check off, regardless of the fact that it's not really a full solution to the problem. I feel like many Democrats promise to be sanctuary cities because it's a promise they have to make to appease their base. And so I'm trying to understand, I'm trying to empathize with where they're coming from, and I can't come up with it. It just seems like a raw political play for votes. Okay. That's all this is.
Of course it is. Well, it's also, there's this unbelievable myth that Democrats want the illegal alien and the immigration flow to come in because they want the votes, and that the Republicans want them just simply so this way they could get cheap labor. And that's where the myth lies. That right there says that only Republicans have businesses. Okay?
Yeah.
Democrats have businesses too.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so really what it comes down to is Democrats have a double wish. They have a double incentive. We're going to get the votes and we're going to get the cheap labor.
Yeah.
Republicans have one. We're going to get the cheap labor. So that's why it is that the Democrats are fighting so heavily for this all the time, and the Republicans, not so much, but they don't push the other way either because they've got their people who are saying, hey, listen, don't get rid of these guys. I need somebody to be doing this on the cheap labor side. One of the biggest things that always gets overlooked, and you just talked about it, but it never gets talked about on the, how can you say it, on the 5-minute television shows. It doesn't get talked about on Fox or CNN or any of these other different things. One of the reasons why I would really like to see this administration put in place immediately every single measure they can possibly do to just push people to self-deport and go home. And the way you do that is by cutting off the job market, you cut off the money, you cut off the welfare, you cut off everything. You cut it off. If you cut that off and they go home, not only is that better for the economy, not only is that better for the lowering of crime and the lowering of drugs and the lowering of all these different other, the cost of giving these people medical services. I mean, the costs drop humongous. But the other thing it does is it protects long-term against this country forever being a left country. And what I mean by that is that eventually there will be a president who is going to have everything aligned for them. They're going to have the Senate, they're going to have the Congress, and they're going to have the presidency, right? And when they do, and they go and they give an amnesty to these people and they automatically become voters, this is far different than the amnesty mistake that Ronald Reagan did in 1986. In 1986, Ronald Reagan thought that he was going to give amnesty to 1 million people. It turned out to be almost 4 million people. 4 million people in a country of our size is pretty much like, a pimple on an elephant's butt.
Yeah.
But nowadays, that's not the case anymore. There's no 11 million people. There are so many different arguments or different numbers. Yours truly, I put it around 30 million. You can have, it's 20 million, 30 million. Some people, I got this one guy, this Michael Cutler guy from retired INS, said it's got to be closer to 40 million people. So you take that number and you give a good portion of those people amnesty or pathway to citizenship. And what you have basically done is you have created a scenario where you're making the whole voter bloc out there left. And that's one of the reasons why the incentive should be now for this administration to do everything they can to send these people home. So this way, God forbid, we don't win 2020 or we don't win 2024, that next person comes in there and says, all right, well, they built the wall. Okay, great. They built the wall. We'll give them the wall. And they did this and they did that and whatever it may be. But they didn't send these people home. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to give all of you amnesty. We're going to give you all a pathway to citizenship. There's nothing the Republicans can do to stop us. And here we go. We're screwed.
Well, isn't there an argument to be made that many of the Latino immigrants that come to this country actually have political values that are more aligned with Republicans and conservatives, particularly on issues of, of being pro-life. I do think that they're probably more conservative on some social issues because of the Catholic Church than most liberals are. Am I wrong? Am I off base there?
You're off base. I mean, yeah, there's a percentage of the Latino population who will and have voted Republican. But make no mistake, in 1986, when Ronald Reagan literally gave amnesty, he gave it. There was no reward in the next election.
Yeah.
George Bush Sr. did not get the Latino vote. In fact, his percentage of Latino vote dropped. And what people have to remember is that when immigrants come here to the country, by and large, they come here poor. They come here poor. And so therefore, they rely on the sort of programs that the Democrats want to keep in place. So what they do is they vote to keep those things in place. Even though from a Christian standpoint, as you're pointing out, it may say that everything, because they're hard work, let's not deny it. They're hardworking people. They come from a culture where it's work, right? And they believe in God, and they believe in the pumping out babies and saying no to abortion, whatever it may be, however you want to characterize this. All those things make sense that they should be Republicans. But Republicans don't want to give away things for free. They want people to be independent. They want people to be self-reliant. And yet, when you're down and you're not making a lot of money and you need the government, you need the dependency, you vote that way. This is not a theory. This is proven. If you look over the course of time, immigrants, by and large, in big numbers, vote Democrat.
But at what point do they switch? That's what I'm so interested in. Because if there's so many people in this country, I mean, from Italian communities and Irish communities, and that if these people would come here and they were just expecting free things forever, then we should be a predominantly Democratic country, and we're not. So at some point, these communities switch, and so I'm interested in at what point is that?
I don't think we'll see that switch
for a long time
in our lifetime. Well, maybe in your lifetime, but I don't think I'll see it in my lifetime. Eventually, hopefully, when people have been here long enough, like every generation, right? You had the Italians, you had the Polish, you had the Irish. We came in earlier, right? They come over here, and people, they tend to change their direction of different things the longer they're around. I mean, it's just like anything else, right? They say that most times when you're kids are Democrats, and then eventually when they got to start getting into the real world and they got to start paying bills and whatever, they suddenly realize the fact that it's smarter to be a Republican.
Well, what is making me think this is that every cab driver I have in New York, every single one, they're immigrants. They speak broken English. They don't want any more immigration. They've come to this country and they want to shut the doors. They don't even want their uncle coming. I mean, like, it's done. And it's not just people from Latin America. It's also people from the Middle East. They're like, no more. I'm here. So I do think that there's an element.
No more, comma, with the exception of my own family.
Right.
Okay? Because you got to remember another thing about our immigration system, and most people don't know this. We have a thing called chain migration. So when you come over, all right, and then after you're over, you are then capable, after you get through a certain part of the process, and I don't want this to be too educational, but I mean, when you get through a certain part of the process, you can then petition and sponsor your family members, your brother, your sister, your grandmother, to come over. And that's how chain migration works. All right? So that's where our immigration system fails. Our immigration system right now isn't based on what skill you have and what you can offer to America. Our immigration system is based on who you're related to.
Well, and look, and that's how a place like Australia works, right? Where you actually go to the Australian immigration website and they've listed these job requirements. Like, they're looking to fill certain jobs, and they're usually high-skilled jobs from highly educated people. And they're like, if you want to come to this country, apply for one of these jobs. If you get the job, we'll bring you in. It's not the other way around. Our country works in this way. I mean, you come to this country illegally or legally, or you overstay a visa, and then you find a job. You know, and so we've got it backwards. And in other industrialized countries on this planet have figured this out. I don't know why we don't look to those examples and say, yeah, that makes sense. Why wouldn't we apply it here? Even the Canadians do it. Now, the Canadians also have this outrageous refugee policy where it's just basically open borders. But they also, in terms of legal, high-skilled immigration, they have better programs than we do. So it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense.
We have anything else? We've been on this immigration thing for a while.
No.
We have anything else to dive onto that?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, so we'll tell them a couple things. All right, so there's a couple of things you should know. First of all, we are on Monday, well, as of right now, knock on wood, on Monday, we are going to be launching Officially Official. And what we've decided to do, or what I decided to do and Harlan agreed with, is that we're going to still remain at the same time, although we're going to move it to 11:30. And what we're going to do is we're going to basically rename the show. It's going to be Harlan on the Hill. And Harlan every day at this time is going to give you pretty much 3 or 4 major things that you need to know that are taking place in Washington, D.C. How those things will affect you, what's going on, you'll get the insight, he'll give you facts and figures. It's going to be really, really sharp. It's going to be really well produced. It's going to be very simple at the same time too. It's just going to be sitting there and you're just going to get the sort of information that you're going to love. Then the second thing that we're doing, obviously, is we're going to be doing a show called The Truth with Dennis Michael Lynch. Now that's when yours truly comes into the play, and Harlan's here, and we'll have Scarlett will be doing a DML report in between during that show. It's a half-hour long. We'll be having guests via Skype, very well produced, sort of more in the way that my Newsmax show used to be, and that is going to, we haven't totally come down on the time yet, but in reading the responses that you have come back with, people are concerned that we were playing it at 8:30 at night. They say, Dennis, I've already wind down by 8:30 at night. Or Dennis, I'm on the West Coast and 5:30 is when I'm in my car going home and it's an hour's traffic. So we think what we're going to do is we're going to air it once at like 4:30 and then maybe again at 8:30. And then after that, it's just up there for you to watch. So that is starting on Monday. It may be a little clunky at times, although we're trying to get all that clunkiness out of the way at this point right now, so this way it would be nice and smooth. And you are going to be able to watch that on a site that we'll be launching over the weekend called DMLDaily.com. Right now, it won't go anywhere. It will just redirect to DennisMichaelLynch.com. But you're going to have, there's a video player up there. And so, yes, you will be able to comment in real time as you are doing that with no problems whatsoever. You can do it on your wireless device. You can do it on your computer. It's there for you. You're still going to get the alerts for as long as you got the DML app. You're going to get the alerts on Facebook because we're going to just up every single day at 11:30 and at 4:30 and at 8:30. We are going to put up a post that says, hey, here we are, we're live, and so you could go watch it there. As far as simulcasting it to other places, I'm not sure how that works yet, but we have our buddy Mark who lives in the Midwest. He's flying in here tomorrow, and we're going to have that all set up by Friday afternoon. So that's that. So it's very important that if you don't have the DML app, that you go and you get it now. You can do that by going to the Google Play Store, or you go to the iOS Store and look for Dennis Michael Lynch or DML app, and you download it and make sure your notifications are on. And aside from that, I don't know if you brought it up yet or not, but did you bring up about your sofa, your new sofa?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I introduced it. In the chair, right?
In the new chair, yeah. So we got the new sofa. Ironically, the sofa, I think, was we got it. It was a floor model, and I was with Mary, and we were looking for something because we knew we had a chair. Well, I took the slow road to figure that the green sofas were not working. One of those times when I was absolutely wrong. Wow, you don't hear me say that too often. But I was absolutely wrong. But now on this sofa, this actually came out to be, I think it was listed for like $870-something. Ironically, close to that 871 that we got from that beautiful lady, Gloria. So we will officially say that Gloria has bought that couch for us. And so that's that. So she'll be on the set every single day. So I hope you like it. If you don't like it, I don't know what to tell you. We are not changing it. And that is that. All right, that's it for us, right?
That's it.
All right, until tomorrow, may God bless you, may God bless our troops, may God bless the United States of America, and may God bless Gloria. See you later.